The purpose of this video is to introduce you to the combined type invoice. You might notice when you're in a service order, the invoice type field defaults to combined, as you'll see here. There are other types of invoices, which we'll take a look at in another video, but the one that defaults is combined. What that is it's a way for you to put the whole work order onto one invoice, and then on that invoice you can add additional work orders for that same billing customer. So for example, I have this work order here open and I'm ready to invoice it. I have all my items on the order. When I invoice this on a combined invoice, all the items, the whole work order is going to go onto one invoice. So let me go ahead and just click invoice to close out this order and then add it to an invoice. Now you'll notice the work order is in the invoice status, and when we look at the items on the order item tab, every item is fully invoiced. Now let's jump to the invoice and take a look at it. So a way to jump to the invoice from the work order is to go to the totals tab and click on the right jump to invoice. So I'll click jump to invoice. We've moved down to the invoicing module. And on this invoice, you're going to see the details tab, which shows you that billing customer. And on the service order tab, you're going to see all the service orders associated with this invoice. Right now, we just have one service order linked to this invoice. You can always preview that email. So I'm going to preview the invoice. So let's just preview it. We can see those three items from that one work order added to this invoice. Now, since it's a combined invoice, you can add more work orders to the same invoice. So if I click this Add Service to Invoice button, it's right on the Service Order tab. I'll click Add Service to Invoice. It allows me to choose other work orders for that same billing customer. So I have another one that's actually ready to invoice. I have it under the status of ready. So I'll just double click on it and it just closes out that closes out that service order and adds it to this invoice. So now I have two service orders associated with this invoice. Let's hit print email and preview that invoice now. You can see there's 4 line items showing here. Now, if I wanted to remove one of these work orders from the invoice, you would just select it and click Remove Service from Invoice. It's going to change that service order from a invoice state back to a closed state. So if I click Remove, it'll remove that work order from this invoice. Now, if I need to edit what's on this invoice, you actually need to edit the work order because the work order is tied to the invoice. So for example, maybe on this particular invoice, I forgot to put a charge on there, or I need to actually charge for 3 hours of work, not just one. So you actually need to go to the work order, edit the work order, and re-invoice it. So I'm going to double click right on this service order that's tied on this invoice, and it's going to jump me to order 2185. And we're back on that service order that's in the invoice state. Go to the order items tab. That's again where we see those 3 items that were previously added. And I thought maybe I need to increase the quantity of this hourly rate. So if I double click on it to open it up, I can change the quantity to 3 here. And I'll just click OK. Notice what happened was this particular line item, notice the invoice state went to partial invoice. So it's previously it was fully invoiced. Then I added 2 more quantities, so it went partially. And the label at the top is showing partially invoiced. So there's an item on here that hasn't been added to the combined invoice yet. So to update the combined invoice, you just need to hit this invoice lightning bolt again, and it will move that item to fully invoiced. And you'll see the label at the top shows invoiced rather than partially. And if we go back to the invoice, let's take a look at it. So I'm going to go to the totals tab and jump to the invoice. Let's preview what that invoice looks like. Now notice the hourly quantity is 3. That's what we changed it to. Now, if we were to go back to that service order and try to delete an item off this service order, like this crew travel, if I want to take it off, it's a fully invoiced item on this combined order, And if I try to delete it off, it tells me I cannot delete invoiced items. So what you actually have to do is remove that service order from the invoice or roll back the invoice, change, have the item be in the status of not invoiced yet. You can't delete it if it's been fully invoiced. So what I would need to do is either go down to the invoice, either remove this service order from the invoice or void out the whole order, or delete the whole invoice. Here, I'll just hit delete. Oh, I don't have permission on this particular login. So let me just remove this service order from this invoice, just like we did before by removing it. When we go back to the service order, the status is going to be closed. And if we go to the order items tab, notice the items are not invoiced. So I'm going to, now that it's not invoiced, I can delete the item off the order or delete or decrease the quantity. I'm just deleting it actually. And if we go back to the invoice, we can reassociate that work order to the invoice. So we're back on the invoice, and just like we did before, you can click the add service to invoice, and I'm going to pick that service order number that I just edited and link it in. So this is the invoice that I've deleted, or sorry, this is the service order I deleted that I think it was travel off of it. So when we go and preview the invoice, it just has the hourly rate and the material item. So a combined invoice is a way to link a service or install order to an invoice. You can have multiple service or install orders for the same billing customer on one invoice. To edit the invoice, a combined invoice, you actually have to edit the service order or install order, and that updates the invoice.